When you hear the Four Tops and Sonny and Cher and Frank Sinatra, she was the bass player. So she happened to be there and she had a bass with her. And I walked up and introduced myself. Would you mind playing for me? And she played, something like that. In my mind, I knew all the notes. And immediately she said, no, 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 that's not it.
Gene, I was watching this video a couple hours ago of you and the legendary bass player Carol Kaye, and she's almost giving you a lesson. I don't know if that was the intention of that hang together, but she's showing you something. Do you remember what she was teaching you, and were you trying to learn something from her, or what was that interaction that is on YouTube?
Well, here's where it came from. I was the voice, the narrator for, believe it or not, a hip hop documentary. The premise being that the beginnings of hip hop had to do with the early hip hoppers sampling a song called Apache by the Bongo Doodah Band, something like that. It's just the guy who was my partner in the publishing venture, Simmons Comics, Michael Wiener, who was not musical at all, put together this little studio group, and you had an idea about a feeling, kind of a rhythmic thing, which was a minor hit, but for whatever reason, early hip hop sampled a lot of that. So on early Fat Boys and Run DMC and all that stuff, you hear it, Grandmaster Flash and all that. So I was in the studio, recording studio in LA, to do some last minute overdubs. Carol was there as well. So here's a little brief synopsis of Carol. When you hear the Four Tops and Sonny and Cher and Frank Sinatra and Nat King Cole and everybody, she was the bass player, sometimes the guitarist. But her bass playing was revered so much in the what's called the Wrecking Crew. They were the secret musicians who played on all those Byrds, Paul Revere and the Raiders, anybody, Frank Sinatra, everybody. That, for instance, The Beat Goes On by Sonny and Cher. The most memorable thing about that is actually the bass line. Bum, 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 bum. And that's what Carol did. She would come up with these bass licks that, in and of themselves were certainly hooks, memorable. She played on Four Tops, other Motown artists, and so on. When people mostly perceive of James Jamerson, the iconic bass player, being that. But no, she's this small Jewish blonde woman who Americanized her name, Kaye, who played on all those things. So she happened to be there and she had a bass with her. And I walked up and introduced myself. I'm a big fan. What you did, in the early days was amazing and stuff. Would you mind playing for me? I wanted to see it firsthand because, I can play. And she played something like that. And I tried to show off. And I remember saying, here, let me try that. I think I can do that. And I thought in my mind, I knew all the notes, I knew where the fingers went. So I thought I reproduced it. And immediately she said, no, 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 that's not it. And grabbed the bass and did it again. I couldn't tell the difference. I said, let me try it again. And I played it again. She said, no, no, no. Well, what's the problem? She said, you are playing the notes, but you're not playing the feeling. The only analogy I can make is when you see a Shakespearean actor reading the words of Shakespeare and you go, oh, I could do that. So you pick up the Shakespearean play and you actually wind up saying those words, but you're not emoting. You don't have the feeling. Those words mean nothing in your mouth, even though they're exactly the same words as a Shakespearean actor is saying, if you see what I mean.
Did you get a sense at the end of it of what she was trying to get at, or the whole time you go, I can't tap into this specific thing?
I got closer. I got closer, but you never know if the feeling is right because everything that you hear or you see is about feelings, how you feel about it. So I got closer, but you never really know until you hear the full musical canvas, drums, keyboards, vocal, and stuff. And then you see whether or not the puzzle fits.
Do you think that the character of Gene Simmons overshadows the fact that you're actually, I think, a phenomenal bass player? Do you think you get enough credit for being a great bass player?
It honestly doesn't mean anything to me.
Really? Because is that not what you set out to do? Was the bass just a tool to get everything else?
Well, there's the why question, and then what did you set out to do? The why question is that I'm comfortable in my own skin. I know how good I am, and I know my shortcomings. And what other people have to say about it is, well, they're unqualified to have an opinion. They haven't been there and they haven't done that. So and I listen, I appreciate people's point of view, but it doesn't pierce my thick skin. Doesn't mean anything. The uh, why did you do this? Well, the real answer is I did it for the same reason that Springsteen and everybody else did it in our younger years, even though they don't admit it, is because initially you wanted the chicks and then you wanted the money. And then there was a split. Some artists thought they were, I have the secret life, or I want to be deep and poetic and credibility and all that stuff. But initially, we all did it for the same reason. Otherwise, we would have all gotten our dentist or plumber's license and did that. But chicks don't care if you're a good plumber.
But there wasn't was it really the only reason was because I guess you saw the Beatles on Ed Sullivan and you just thought that that was a path, but there was no, or maybe I'm sure there was, but how deep was the love for the actual music, or was that really not it when that motivated you to get into this?
Well, of course, I love the music, and but people don't understand that initially, when you fall in love with a band or an artist, you're actually listening with your eyes, and that's worth slowing down and saying that so that it gets digested. You think music, almost by definition, is just supposed to tickle your ears. But that's not actually what happens. What happens is first, your ears start to tingle because you're hearing things that you like, in my case, the Beatles. But then, if somehow it connects with the visuals, then something magical happens. You become a fan. So you ask, especially girls, you ask, you like this song? Oh, I love that song. Oh, no, they sing along with it. What's the name of the band who did it or the artist? Oh, I have no idea, but I really like that song. And that's the group's fault. That's the artist's fault that they didn't connect their image or their persona with the song. They were just elevator music. When you hear the music in an elevator, you have no emotional connection with who did it. It's just background noise. But my first music that I heard and fell in love with was black music. Chuck Berry, Little Richard, Fats Domino, that stuff before the Beatles. And that's also what they listened to. When you hear the Beatles going, woo, 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 all that stuff, that's all Little Richard.